Christian and non-Christian paranormal investigators. They have two different views, and it seems as if neither of them can ever agree on anything. So what happens when a mainstream view of the paranormal crosses paths with the Christian view? Something epic. This is ParaTruth Radio.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new episode of ParaTruth Reborn. This is the first episode of ParaTruth Reborn. As always, my name is Eric.
And I'm Justin.
And we are very happy to be back with you guys. It has been an entire year since we left the whole paranormal realm. But as we had mentioned so many times over the years, there's always something that pulls us back in. No matter how hard we try to leave, we get sucked right back.
I think we've talked about that numerous times, actually.
Oh, yeah, a lot of times. So I think the first thing here is, the big elephant in the room is this isn't called ParaTruth Radio anymore, but instead ParaTruth Reborn. And Justin and I had been talking about this for quite a while, and the name was just kind of like a quick thing. Actually, as of the recording of this episode, we were talking about it. We just thought about it today. But we want to bring a new vibe to ParaTruth. We've spent so many years talking with various individuals, authors, paranormal investigators, cryptid hunters, and as well as just talking about the various researches that we've done over the years with cryptids and UFOs and even ghost hunting 101, angels, demons, etc. So one of the problems that we had a year ago was we were kind of losing a lot of things to talk about. The topics are running dry because we had spent years and years and years. And unfortunately, as of last summer, aside from some UFO things happening, there wasn't much happening in the paranormal world. So why did we come back? Well, aside from more UFO stuff happening,
among other things happening,
there's just been a lot happening in the paranormal community that has been kind of new and vibrant and has kind of revitalized our passion in the paranormal, things that we wanted to talk about and kind of bring a new twist on or a new flavor. And one of the good things about going with ParaTruth Reborn is we get to revisit a lot of those old topics that we did way back in 2016 or 2008 or whatever it was, and really just share that with you guys. Another thing that we're going to be doing differently is having a little more structure on the show as well. As you guys know, we're the type who really love to just wing it, go through the information, discuss it a bit, and then sign out. Well, we've been doing other podcasts over the last year, and we found that the way we started to structure a lot of our shows has really helped tie in not only our topics, but the communication that we have with individuals who are either guests on the show or just people who are listening, who are passionate about the things that we discuss. And we know that there's a lot of people interested in the paranormal in general, but we have a lot of people still tuning in to ParaTruth Radio on a weekly basis over this last year, even though there have been no new shows. So we think that coming back to you guys with a new structure, a new refreshed vigor for the paranormal and all the things happening in the shadows, that I think it's something you guys are really going to enjoy and really be engaged in.
Absolutely. And I think we're going to try and keep it on topic as much as possible. As you have all heard, if you've listened to ParaTruth Radio, we go on what we call a rabbit trail. And I think that keeping with the new structure will deter us from that. It has so far. Anyways,
we're going to go ahead and just cage up Jasper the pair of hair. He needs to stay put in his cage.
Yeah. So, I mean, at some point, maybe we'll go with a new mascot, maybe not, but it's one of those things where we've enjoyed ParaTruth Radio. We loved Night Stalkers when we first started podcasting. Eric loved Forgotten Truth when he started doing his own thing, and Parasite Radio when I started doing my own thing. We've loved doing ParaTruth, and I've also loved doing Beyond Reason when I was doing Beyond Reason. But as Eric said, you know, as you do this over the years, it's basically the same stuff over and over again. And it's very hard to not just find new topics, but still have that passion after doing it week after week, every week for however many years we did it. So we're also going to keep this on a seasonal type structure instead of doing it, you know, every week for an entire year. Mm-hmm. So I think that'll keep us on track too.
For sure, 100%. I think the seasonal thing has been something that's worked really well for us this past year. I do want to apologize. I know my voice is a little off and I keep wanting to cough. So here and there, I get a little high pitch and then I try to hold it back. I just got over COVID and the air has been kind of dry lately as well. So yippee, great voice for the first episode. But, you know, let's talk about what's been going on, because despite everything that we just talked about, Justin and I, even though we haven't been doing ParaTruth Radio, we have very much still been diving in and, you know, enjoying a lot of paranormal happenings over this last year, because there has been a lot happening. So we're always sending videos to each other. We're always trying to debunk photographs or various cryptid videos or ghost videos that we've been seeing around TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. You know, for me, one thing that has been really interesting or intriguing is just the spiritual path that I've been on this past year, ever since leaving ParaTruth. I've always been spiritually, or I should say, inclined in the discernment aspect of spirituality, right? I tend to notice darker entities more often and clearly than good ones. That's just something that's always been a thing for me since becoming saved anyway. But I have also noticed that over the last 6 months or so, there have been a lot of increases in both paranormal activity and in shadow people or some sort of ghostly like phenomenon happening that I would see regularly in my house, at other buildings, inside of stores. And that's something that's becoming more and more common for me. And I'm not really practicing my discernment. I'm not like trying to hone my skill. It's just gradually been happening. Maybe as I've been getting closer to God and digging deeper into the scriptures, the Holy Spirit's providing this discernment again. But nonetheless, these things have been making themselves known to me in some way for some reason. Don't know why. Don't know what the reason is, but it's been enough to pull us back to this position here with ParaTruth.
Yeah, I've been feeling the spiritual awakening again for myself too. And we can kind of get into that next episode because we've got a topic that we're going to touch on that. But it's one of those things where that's when my interest in the paranormal peaks again, is when that happens. Oh yeah, for sure. And you know, and I have to say, like, I mean, you guys are getting this first episode in September. You know what's right around the corner, so we're psyched. You know, Halloween is coming up. We got the fall. I call it fall, and then the dead season. So, winter doesn't exist. It's just the dead season. It's a very depressing season for myself personally. But it's still a season, like especially that transition in which the veil between worlds seem to be thinner than it is the rest of the year.
So as you know, throughout the year, over these last 6 months, I've noticed things becoming increasing in terms of activity, more and more so. And like right now, recording this episode, it is August. You guys know that we do pre-records instead of live, but I am thinking by the time this episode releases, which I believe is the end of September, there's going to be more activity happening around me and in this house. And I am going to be increasing my investigative nature by going to various places and conducting more paranormal investigations and studying the supernatural, which is something that we used to do a long while ago. I haven't really had the opportunity to do since, occasionally here and there, but
right. Well, and you should absolutely just set up a voice recorder in the house too, and just let it record while you're gone, even when you're home, because you could set it up in the studio too, where your normal house noises aren't going to be happening.
Right.
So I look forward to going over that footage and reviewing it, because it's going to be one of those things where at some point we will probably get something, because we've talked about how that house is haunted, over multiple episodes. So,
so before moving on here, I do want to add something that happened recently. Actually, it was like July, and I told you about this, Justin. I sent you a photo. There was a mask that I came across at a antique store out in Canton, Ohio. And this mask is it's an African mask. And as far as I can tell, based on its look and what I've compared to various photographs online, it seems to be pretty legit. The markings are all there, the chisel marks, etc. There's certain ways to be able to tell between what is a legitimate African mask and what is just a replica that was maybe produced by a machine or something. And this one seemed to be pretty legit. However, one thing that happened, I was walking to the store and I saw this thing, and I knew immediately as soon as I saw it, I was gravitated toward it. Like, I was like, this is cool. I want this for my library. And as soon as I touched it, there was just this overwhelming feeling of negativity on it. Don't know if it was a spirit attachment, if it was an energy attachment, or what. But, I had mentioned it to the person I was with, and she too is spiritually inclined. And so she was like, well, let me see. And she held it. And I think she didn't believe me at first, because I've always told her that I have spiritual discernment in the negative aspect of the spiritual realm. And she was holding it, staring at it for a moment. And she handed it back to me and said, oh yeah, there's something weird about this. And so I kind of juggled whether or not I should take it with me, whether I should buy it. Of course I bought it, because why not? There might be something dark attached to it. Let's take it home. Right. Just exactly what your parents want you to bring home. So I brought it home, and before bringing it into the house, I did a cleansing. I cleared it. I talked to the spirit. If there was a spirit attachment, I talked to the spirit, told it it wasn't allowed in the house, and then rebuked it in the name of Christ, and that it had to leave and do whatever it does. In this case, wander the earth, I suppose. That's what spirits tend to do, supposedly, according to the scriptures, when they're cast out. And so I brought this thing into the house, and for a couple of days, there was some residualness, like residual darkness hovering around it. But after about 2 or 3 days, it just wore off, and there's not been anything negative attached to it whatsoever since. And I find that really intriguing, because there are a number of individuals who I have either seen online or have talked to personally who are dealing with spiritual attachments or energy attachments, and they don't know how to get rid of them. They post online asking for help. In fact, there was a person recently, Justin, I sent you a text with some remarks for myself and these people. But her original post said, someone help. is there any witches, mediums, or priests in the group who can help me out? I mean, those are, mind you, 3 pretty different, and apparently she claimed that she had a demon attachment. The demon, like, I'm not afraid to say the demon's name. So if any of you are, feel free to close your ears right this moment. But the demon's name apparently is Amon, and he is one of the demons mentioned in the Lesser Key of Solomon, one of the 72, and he's a high-ranking demon. And in this case, this person believed that she had this particular entity attached to her, which I think is pretty unlikely. It's very rare that high-ranking demons are going to attach to just anybody, but not impossible.
And announce their name on top of that.
And announce their name so easily. And that's the other thing. Like, she had a feeling this was who it was, but she was talking to a medium or psychic. I think she said medium. And they were able to conjure the entity and ask its name, and it just willingly gave its name. And if it's a demonic entity, unless it's full pride and very confident in its ability and strength to resist being cast out or binded, it typically won't give its name. Now, I will say here, because a lot of people who tend to study or believe in demonic attachments, affliction, oppression, or even possession, they tend to believe that they work in the way that the Catholic Church claims that they work. The rites of exorcism are not biblically founded. They are created by man, and they go through a process of elimination before even determining whether or not there is a demon. And then if there is, they have to go through another process to determine whether or not the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, will actually do an exorcism. And then they'll go through this whole rites thing where you got to get the name of the demon and this and that. And this is something that I always like to argue with people, because, and I brought this up to the people in the group, and I got remarked, there's some people, no one bad, thankfully. Like, so often I get quick rejections from people, but there are actually people who are so interested in just liking stuff, loving stuff, responding like, this is okay, that makes sense. Biblically speaking, in order to bind a demon or even cast it out, in most cases, you do not need to know its name. All spirits in the spirit realm have to be obedient to the name of Jesus. And so long as you truly, and mind you, the name of Jesus has power in and of itself. You don't have to believe necessarily. In fact, the Bible shows us that there are non-believers who are casting out demons in the name of Jesus. And when the disciples asked Jesus about it, he said, whoever is for us isn't against us. Let them be. And so with that said, you don't always need to know the demon's name to bind it and cast it out. All you need is the power of Christ. And if you're a believer, then how much stronger that is, because your relationship in the Holy Spirit within you is going to be able to fight that entity, and it will not be able to take possession of this is the thing, like, people think demons can just possess. They can't just possess. Like, yes, it happens. It's rare. They tend to afflict and oppress for more. But if you're a believer and you have the Holy Spirit within you, it is impossible for a demon to possess them, because the body is already occupied by the God of the universe. So I know this is a bit of a ramble, but it's something that I think we don't talk about much on the show ever. A little bit here and there when we're talking about demonology and stuff. But I just see it so often where people are scared and they're fighting and they're asking for help because they don't know how to help themselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you also have to be very careful of what kind of help you're seeking, because there are a lot of people out there who will claim they can cast out a certain spirit, but they don't know how to cleanse that person or how to make sure that the spirit doesn't come back, because you have to replace, the scriptures say that when a spirit is cast out, it'll roam the world, and when it roam the earth, and when it comes back, it'll find its original home cleaned up and put in order, and it'll go back inside and bring with it 7 more powerful demons in itself. So when you cast a spirit out, whether that be out of the person's body, out of their house, out of an inanimate object that it's attached to, it has to be replaced by a spiritual, I'm going to say by God. Simple as that. It has to be replaced by God in order to keep that spirit at bay and from coming back. But unfortunately, there are a lot of people who just want to throw some sage around, anger the spirit, make it leave, or at least make them think it left, and then come back and makes things worse. And we've seen that over and over and over again over the years. And we've talked about that on the show over the years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that was a very long ramble.
It was maybe,
but
maybe
I think that's why it's reinforced in you to come back with the show.
Yes.
So I think that is the best thing is to share what exactly is bringing us back. So I am glad that we are reapproaching everything, because we've gone through the years with kind of pretty much agreeing in the end, even though ParaTruth has always been about discussing both sides. So this will give us that chance to give that a little more attention too.
100%.
So something that I really wanted to discuss this episode, because I recently took a trip to Minnesota. We were going for a vacation, trying to go to the Black Sand Beach in Minnesota. Unfortunately, didn't get to the Black Sand Beach because it was busy as heck. But we went and just had a good time. The one thing I noticed about getting more east in Minnesota is that a lot of towns are... The best word I can describe it is cashing in on Bigfoot sightings. And I think Bigfoot sightings are relatively well known in Minnesota, but there were several towns that really advertised Bigfoot. So we were driving home and we went through a town, and it had Bigfoot like signs everywhere and statues everywhere, or wood carvings. And I didn't catch the name of the town, but after doing some research, I'm pretty sure that this was the town. There's a town that is known as the home of Bigfoot. And the name of that town is Remer, Remer. So this town is well known for Bigfoot sightings because a gentleman had coined the name. His name was Mark Ruick, the home of Bigfoot, because it was a sighting that happened there multiple times. And it started in the early 1900s. So we drove through this town. If it was Remer, they only have about 400 people. And this town we drove through was a relatively small town. If you sneezed, you were through it. It's a heavily wooded area. They have obviously a lot of woodland creatures out there. So things that could be mistaken as Bigfoot, possibly. But according to this account, there's squirrels, deer, bear, which a lot of mistaken sightings of Bigfoot have been bear sightings. Mm-hmm. But they're saying even Bigfoot. There was a particular instance in 2009 on a trail cam where people believed it was a real life Sasquatch. and these aren't stupid people. I mean, they're intelligent people. So I don't know if it was Remer or not, but this town that I went through was like advertising Bigfoot bad. So I wanted to kind of go over this because I've never heard of the Minnesota town that is coined the home of Bigfoot. Something that we have talked about over the years is our belief in Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. As many trail cams as you've seen of supposed Bigfoot sightings, has any of them made you question that it is actually a Bigfoot sighting?
Like made me for a moment maybe believe that it was actually Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I'd probably say maybe at least two or three have probably caught enough. Like, I think it'd been significant enough to have me be like, that's possible. That one might actually be Bigfoot. But the majority, I would say, always, in my opinion, they look pretty fake. Mostly because of the way the Sasquatch or Bigfoot or Yeti, wherever it was, this video was taken around the world, was kind of walking very humanistic. One thing I think a lot of people tend to do is they want to base the look of Bigfoot on the original video that was shown. I think it was released. It was filmed in the Rocky Mountains. Was it the 70s that it was? Do you recall?
Oh, the Patterson.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I think the mid 70s, if I'm not mistaken.
And so, a lot of these videos that pop up, they try to mimic that same walk of that creature, because in that video, that's what really sparked Bigfoot. Now there have always been sightings of Bigfoot throughout various cultures around the world for hundreds, if not thousands of years. There are various writings and drawings upon cave walls. There are things in manuscripts that have mentioned it. We see the same thing about UFOs and aliens and all that stuff around the world. But the Native Americans especially have had documentation of their own kind on this creature being around. But for whatever reason, a lot of the videos that we do see that seem to be like this could be Bigfoot, they tend to be very, very grainy or diluted with some sort of fuzz or something, some sort of distortions, and then they just vanish and we never get a clear view of it.
Right. So that's why it kind of piques my interest that there's supposedly, and of course they don't show the footage per se on this article that I came across. It was on CBS News. But it is interesting nonetheless, because I never knew Bigfoot had that big of a following in Minnesota.
I mean, what else is there to follow in Minnesota?
I mean, same thing for North Dakota. But yeah, it was fascinating just to drive through. I mean, outside of the sites that we saw, because, right, North Dakota is just nothing but flatland. But to come across this article too, because all I put in is Bigfoot in Minnesota, and this is what popped up. Right. The other thought that came to my mind, and I'm not saying that this guy is trying to cash in on it, but is it just someone trying to give their town notoriety because supposedly there's been all these Bigfoot sightings?
I mean, that's a possibility, but no harm, no foul either, right? A lot of people, they want to have fun, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, in this case, they have the Bigfoot days over here in Minnesota. I don't know what day that happens on, but they have the Bigfoot Olympics. They have Bigfoot barbecue. They have storytelling. They have all these things happening on a specific day or weekend, and it's actually no different than the Mothman Festival that happens in West Virginia every year, which is something I would love to actually go to. I got a chance to visit Point Pleasant a couple of years ago, and that was a bucket list thing to go where the Mothman was seen and see it all. It was like super surreal. And I feel like it's probably the same with Bigfoot here in Minnesota, or of course Roswell out in New Mexico. That's next on my bucket list. And I think, there are people out there who want to believe, and they make up stories to get other people believing, and they cash in. They want to, have a moment of fame, right? Mm-hmm. Or they want to put their name out there, make some money, something. But considering the amount of sightings that there are of the Sasquatch around the world on a regular basis, I do think it's enough evidence to support the idea that this creature does exist. If I think of all the cryptids that we've ever discussed, other than, we'll say, like sea monsters, because the ocean is so vast, we just don't know. But I would say that the Bigfoot, the Yeti, the Sasquatch, the ape man, whatever you want to call them, is probably one of those creatures that actually does exist. When you compare it to something like the Dogman, which is really most notably seen here in the northern part of Ohio, probably mid to northern part of Ohio, and then Michigan, and even in Wisconsin. But around the world, the Dogman isn't as big or as well known, unless you're going back in history, in which we're talking about, Egyptian folklore or Israeli folklore and things like that, which I actually, a year ago, wrote an episode on, which maybe we'll discuss. Maybe we'll bring that in and do an episode on that regarding Dogman stories. But I think Bigfoot is one of those creatures that maybe really does exist out there. I think there's enough, if anything, audible evidence, audio evidence that can support, because they always sound very similar with the screams and the banging of the sticks and things.
Yeah, the knocking.
Thrown.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, this guy Ruick even says that he is skeptical and not a full believer, but from getting all of the legends from the town and the sighting on the trail cam made him really think about it. He didn't say whether, Bigfoot is real, not real, but, there are plenty of woods that go deep enough that we still haven't completely mapped out the entire forest. And there are those stories of people going missing in large forested national parks too. Right. And maybe that is a Bigfoot thing. Maybe it's not, but it's one of those things that makes you wonder the possibility of Bigfoot causing those disappearances too. Right.
Well, something that we've discussed quite a few times is whether or not Bigfoot is actually a physical being, whether it's a spiritual entity that jumps through portals, or if it's even an extraterrestrial of some sort.
Right.
One thing, again, that has been very common in a lot of the quote unquote video sightings is that Bigfoot is very hard to see. The camera's always staticky or blurry, or there's some sort of malfunction. And a lot of people, a lot of researchers have speculated that the creature somehow is able to give off some sort of electromagnetic field that disrupts our cameras, whether it be on our phone or otherwise. And the fact that they disappear so quickly, such a huge creature, by the way, can show up and disappear so quickly, could suggest that it's jumping portals or turning invisible or who knows what. Now, whether or not any of that is true, obviously, is all just speculation. We don't have any hard evidence within our research to say that this is a actual physical creature that is out there and just not documented, or an extraterrestrial being, although there's a lot of discussion that, aliens are going to become a thing this year. Like, people are going to finally admit that they exist, or a spiritual entity, which, again, if it's a spiritual entity, then we only have one thing we can do, and that's to investigate it as if it is a spiritual entity.
Right. Well, if it is a spiritual entity, that this is the first spiritual entity I've ever heard of that gives off an audible sound that everybody can hear, not just on a recording or one person hears it. Not that that hasn't happened in a paranormal investigation where a couple of people or multiple people have heard something.
Right.
But it's like you said, it's the same sound or the same type of cry every time. Same thing with the knocking. It's a very distinct noise, like something big is hitting wood.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't necessarily always see that in the spiritual side of the paranormal.
No, we don't. But here's a thought. In the spiritual side of things, when we're doing an investigation, we typically don't know what we're investigating. We just happen to believe there might be a ghost there. And so a lot of our questions are indirect, just trying to reach out and find something. Yeah. Unless somebody says, oh, I believe it's, such and such. I don't know. We'll say Rosie McDonald, who happens to be haunting. Don't mind the name. It's the name I came up with. It's haunting this place. And then you can direct your questions to this person and then maybe get feedback, right? Mm-hmm. But we've talked about, forget the exact word, but like a mass illusion or a mass belief.
Hysteria.
In an entity. So a mass hysteria. I wasn't sure if hysteria was the right word or not.
Yeah.
But so, when you consider mass hysteria, there is a lot of power, psychic power going into the belief of this creature. And if it is spiritual, then it can easily, in theory, feed off of that energy and manifest itself in the way that it has been in these physical forms, able to verbally, audibly reach out and say, yell or bang things or move stuff like a poltergeist, and then just disappear at will. If it's a spiritual entity. But again, this is something that we've discussed with the Slender Man when it comes to mass hysteria. These are not things that a group of people believe that just simply manifest on its own. Like these aren't ideas that manifest, but these are spiritual creatures that have already pre-existed and now are given more power because of the increase in belief in those beings.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good possibility, too. But in the end, I mean, truthfully, we leave it up to you guys to tell us what you think.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where we can give you information, but we want you not just to think about it, engage with us, tell us what your thoughts are. I have struggled with believing in the Bigfoot for a long time. When I was a kid, absolutely, I was 100% believing in, Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, ghosts. It's been doing the paranormal for as long as I have to increase my critical thinking skills. And actually, I credit that to one of my elementary school teachers because I wanted to check out books on Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster. And believe it or not, this was a math teacher. But he was like, do you really believe that? Do you believe everything that you're told and you read? And I had to think about it. I'm like, well, I can only believe what the author is saying. He's like, yeah, but don't believe everything you're told. Research. And even then, research can only take you so far, but don't just believe what somebody's telling you at face value is basically what he was getting at. So I honestly want you all to think about this conversation and interact with us. Tell us what you guys think, because I feel that it's one of those things that is a very skeptical subject, but I think Eric and I are both at that point where it's like there's something there. What it is, who knows, but there's something there.
Right.
But I think that's all we've got, unless you've got anything else to add.
Nope. I think that's it for this first episode of ParaTruth Reborn.
All right, folks. Until next time, this is Eric and Justin.
Peace.